Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Believe you me, I've seen behind the curtain. Cock-up is much more likely than conspiracy. The idea that we could fake the moon landing, we can't get a drop curve put in. Honestly, I absolutely love any conspiracy theory. I'm like that. Really, these guys? Yeah. Have you met them?
Quiet Riot. Happy New Year and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School, the miniskirt to our Thursday ball gown. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I'm Naomi.
And I'm Alex. How is 2025 treating you so far, Naomi? Better than Jimmy Carter, but not as good as Luke Littler?
Oh, well done, Luke Littler, but I'm so sad about Jimmy.
17, what a dream.
I know, what an amazing superstar.
And Carter made it to 100. I mean, that's a bloody good innings.
Wasn't he even still building homes for people like a few years ago?
Oh, he was still doing stuff, yeah.
2025 treating me very well so far, thank you, Alex. Very glad to be back at work. Got a lot to do, but it is baltically cold. And our listeners that are in not London, I can see that you're getting lots of snow and flooding and treacherous conditions. So sending love to everyone that might be caught up in all of that. Do stay safe.
So one of my, I wouldn't call it a resolution, but one of the things I wanted to start doing was recovering a little bit of flexibility, you know, because I spent such a long time just sitting at a desk that my vertebrae are becoming quite stiff, quite fused, it feels like. So I wanted to start doing a little bit of gentle yoga again every morning, but because I don't have space in my teeny tiny flat, the only place to do it is my roof terrace. I sort of did it one morning and then temperatures dropped so much. It was like, I ain't going out there.
Ice rink on the roof. Come to Pilates with me.
Oh, God, I did Pilates all the way through drama school. I found it really traumatic.
Oh.
I found it really traumatic because the person teaching us was that like this perfect ballet dancer that could hold positions for just 10 minutes. And, you know, everything in her was like sort of tightened wires. There's something about Pilates that means if you can't keep up, you feel really, really terrible.
No.
Because it's like, oh, you just have to hold the position. Why can't I just hold the position?
Speaking of how cold it is and us having to ramp up the central heating, shall we talk about Russian gas and the impact on European energy from the deal with Ukraine coming to an end?
Yeah, let's, because I'm quite ambivalent about it. And also, it is the first show of the year, so let's have a giggle. Shall we unpack that Suella Braverman interview on LBC?
Yes! Oh my God, it was hilarious. And we can throw in a bit about the Badenoch Farage public fallout and Musk's endless support for Farage while rage baiting about the UK, please. Listeners, don't forget that if you'd like to join our 2 on-live sessions that are exclusively for backers and that are coming up in January, do sign up for a monthly subscription to ko-fi.com/quiet-riot-pod. That's ko-fi.
And we now have firm details on those 2 sessions coming up. So we're hosting another Ask Us Anything session on Friday, the 10th of January, over lunchtime. Because we thought if we always do these events in the early evening, they might favor some people's schedules, but disadvantage others. So we've decided to mix it up a little bit. So our first Ask Us Anything session of 2025 is on Friday, the 10th of January over lunchtime. So grab a sandwich and fire your best questions at us.
And then on Sunday, the 26th of January from 11 a.m, we'll have our first editorial meeting of the year where you can help shape the show, tell us what you think we need to be working on over the next few months, both in terms of format, guests, topics to cover, regular features, etc. We found our first one a couple of months ago incredibly useful, and we really love co-creating this show with our backers. So if you're signed up on Ko-Fi, then you'll get an invite to that one too.
All this, and if you join today, you will get an electronic copy of Richard Watson's book for free. He's my guest Friday just gone, and a chance to win a signed copy of his kids' book. So do join from as little as £5 at ko-fi.com/Quiet Riot Pod.
And that really was a good episode. I loved it. And if you haven't listened, pause this one, go and listen to that one, and then come back and dive into Sunday School.
Quiet Riot.
Earlier this week, Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage had a big old public row. The Tory leader accused Reform UK of faking its membership figures after Farage announced that they now boast more than 130,000 sign-ups, meaning they surpassed the official Conservative member number. Badenoch cried foul play. She claimed that Reform's counter was bogus and accused Farage of trying to manipulate voters. He hit back at her, saying she was bitter, offered to let a Big Four audit firm come in and verify the Reform UK membership list. And there have been subsequent reports that Badenoch went in to see GB News bosses and plead with them not to give Farage more coverage. I mean, insane that it's got to the stage where she feels she's got to try and claw back airtime from him when he is an employee, I think, of the channel still. He certainly gets his own show, doesn't he? So from the left's perspective, I was thinking about it, usually you say, don't interrupt your enemies while they're making a mistake. Let them carry on ding-donging at each other. But then when you look at polling, both in terms of Reform UK and voting intention, and then the popularity or, net unpopularity of people like Farage, their ratings are continuing to climb. And so, Alex, you and I, we both revelled in a lesser but nonetheless similarly public disagreement between Trump and Musk over migrant visas in the USA, and Musk supporting Germany's far-right AfD party and Trump going, no, don't think we should get involved in a foreign election. So it made me wonder, are we entering a period of right-wing fratricide? I mean, you'd predicted that bust-ups would happen quite quickly because of the egos involved on, this side of the Atlantic and there. And if so, should those that aren't of that political persuasion sit back and let them do it? Or is there a way they can capitalise on it in a different way? Like, how do we respond other than munching on popcorn and watching them all fall out with each other?
Well, I think I find the American situation quite worrying because actually the conflict was between Musk and MAGAs, not Trump. Trump came down in support of Musk-ish, which I find quite worrying because it indicates that there may be other incentives in their relationship rather than just popularity, if that makes sense. I don't know what's going on here. I think we'll have to keep a close eye on it. And we'll talk more about Musk in relation to the UK in a minute. As far as Farage goes, we are seeing concepts of left and right collapse. And I'm getting the sense that Farage isn't just the left's enemy. I think he is democracy's enemy. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean he's democratically elected, he believes stuff that I disagree with, all of that is fine. But democracy relies on information. It actually relies on voters having good quality information in order to make an educated choice. I know a lot of voters don't avail themselves of that information, but it is different when that information exists out there and when it doesn't. And I think the far right, the pattern of the far right in the last few years, and we've seen that really strongly in the last year, has been to disinform. So they are people who actually make a negative contribution to the democratic tally of any particular country. And that does worry me. I think politicians and political commentators can take a view on that. So they can take a view on the methods without having to take a view on whether they agree or disagree with the sentiment or the policy. There should be much more widespread agreement about the fact that manipulation of information, disinforming the public, causing pylons, making hate a central tenet of your offering is a bad thing, right?
I agree wholeheartedly that he is the enemy of democracy and, sort of hiding in plain sight. He is no parliamentary representative. He is lesser spotted in Clacton, spending far more time elsewhere, getting involved in other countries' politics than he is about the good burgers of Clacton.
He was over there again, by the way.
I know. Oh, I know. And I was thinking, do you remember he was in that terrible plane crash from which he barely survived? I mean, it was incredible that he managed to walk away from it. And you'd thought that would put him off flying, but really, obviously, definitely hasn't.
That was a tiny plane.
Or something. No, he's always away. And I think what's been interesting, and I don't know if you want to talk about this now or later, has been the kind of distancing a little bit from the Tommy Robinson saga that Musk has decided to involve himself in, saying, oh, Tommy Robinson, what a hero, political prisoner, basically. And I know that there is tension within Reform UK over that. There are some, of course, within their ranks that are incredibly supportive of the criminal Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who goes under the name of Tommy Robinson, and then those who are quite good at politics and know just how toxic a figure he is, even with the types of voters one might expect to be more sympathetic towards him, who really, really aren't, and that they should steer very, very clear of him. But there is just this constant undercurrent of we need strong men involved in leading us. And with that comes this barely concealed, you all do as we say because we're the only ones that really are going to get us out of the crap, and you need these strong men and these tough guys to deliver. And I just find it extraordinary that anyone, but particularly other men who are probably, not particularly wealthy, can legitimately believe that these incredibly rich men, Farage as a millionaire, Musk as a billionaire, would have their interests at heart, and that they cannot see that these guys are just in it to line their own pockets.
I mean, it's quite revealing, I think, because we've seen reports that various people from various parties actually have approached Musk to say, Tommy Robinson is not a good person to be supporting. You're not helping us.
Elon Musk, you called him a bloody hero on Boxing Day. Yeah. You said you were expecting a reasonably sized donation. Do you still think that? He's saying remarks now attacking Britain, supporting Tommy Robinson. Is he now political kryptonite to you?
He's very supportive of me. He's very supportive of the party. He sees Robinson as one of these people that fought against the grooming gangs. But of course the truth is Tommy Robinson's in prison, not for that, but for contempt of court for the third occasion. But I mean, equally, there are people in Britain who think that Robinson is a political prisoner. That's the narrative that he's pushed out. That's how he earns his living, but it isn't quite true.
And I find that interesting and quite worrying, because what it says to me is, don't queer the pitch. Like, we almost have them. Yeah. We've almost conned them.
Yeah.
Do not associate us with someone who doesn't know how to play the game, who doesn't know how to beautify hate, who doesn't know how to put a tie on racism, because it hurts our overall strategy.
I was thinking about my time at university when I was involved in running the, student liberals, and the BNP were quite active at that time. If you remember, kind of mid-noughties, they were winning council seats all over the country. And there was a young BNP leader on campus, and lots of the other chairs of the student political groups wanted to no platform him and ban him from being able to speak at the student union. And I said, no, I want to be able to debate this absolute fucking racist and expose him and all of his awful views in front of an audience. That is important. And I stand by that in that format, in that arena, because I do think you legitimize their arguments of, oh, the establishment, they're pushing things up, they're lining their own pockets, they don't want to hear the truth from us, and blah, blah, blah. And we do see this with Farage when he is pushed on anything other than immigration, small boats. He has very little policy heft and he exposes himself immediately and looks ridiculous and not like a prime minister in waiting for having so little policy knowledge on any of the other things you might expect a political leader to have to take a view on and have ideas for. But I also come back to, and I've talked about him on the show before, Popper's paradox of tolerance, which is that as progressive liberals, not necessarily his words, but, you know, as those in favour of open society and humanity, you must never, ever be tolerant of intolerance. But whether that means we should ban Twitter in the UK...
Well, look, okay, so I wanted to ask you about that because you're sort of my go-to liberal person for this kind of thing. And I republicised a very short 10-minute little quiet ride I had done on whether the UK should ban Twitter, where I put in basically the regulators' argument. I just looked at it as a former regulator and said, well, look, we did this for Russia Today. America is doing this for TikTok. I really don't understand the difference between foreign interference when it is state-sponsored and foreign interference when it's state-adjacent.
Yep.
And I got loads of people, and not sort of Musk fans or loons, or coming back saying stifling free speech is never the answer. And I just do not get how and why the notion of the world's richest man quite literally buying up a platform in order to suppress dissent, suppress the people he disagrees with, and promote disinformation, conspiracy theories, and propaganda in favor of a pretty authoritarian incoming regime, of which he is part. I mean, Musk is basically an incoming minister of that government, and he controls a major platform of information and has shown that he has an agenda, he has a pro-far right agenda, and he's willing to interfere with foreign politics. Personally, he's willing to use that platform to skew foreign politics. I just don't get the free speech argument here. It is the opposite.
It's monopoly capitalism. And the same people that will criticise you for that would probably also support the Secretary of State for Business stepping in to block, you know, a newspaper owner from buying another newspaper because they've already got a news channel and 3 other newspapers, and we can't have one person's editorial control over, you know, X percent of the media output in a country. So they just haven't thought about it enough, I think. I've been really surprised by the reaction I've had on social media to me saying yesterday, when I got really quite frustrated about how prostrate our government appears to be in the face of ever escalating baiting from Musk, whether it is around Tommy Robinson or Jess Phillips.
I mean, the Jess Phillips stuff is incredible, Naomi. It's like, it's genuinely dangerous.
Well, and so is the Tommy Robinson thing. This is a man who is a convicted criminal multiple times in prison and who baited and helped to fuel riots on our streets not 6 months ago, all over the bloody country. And I just find it incredible that our government isn't, as a matter of security, of national security, telling him to back the fuck down. And then you've got the personal safety of people like Jess Phillips. It is extraordinary. And I've got people responding to me on social media saying, oh, no, Naomi, Musk is a narcissist. You shouldn't feed their vanity by responding to them. The most painful thing you can do is ignore them. No, I mean, how you treat him and then how you look after your own are separate things. And I would like to feel that I am in a country where my government has got some cojones to stand up to these bullies, is prepared to say, no, you've crossed the line, back off, and look after our politicians, people like Jess Phillips, who, is somebody who was in Parliament at the time when a colleague of hers, who was roughly the same age, got murdered by the very types of people that Tommy Robinson defends and now Musk is defending by proxy.
It's upsetting to think that it will take something horrible to galvanize the government into action. And like I said, if you look at the Russia Today example, if you look at Americans' treatment of TikTok, in my mind, there is zero difference between saying, you're not a media outlet. You're just a propaganda machine and a national security risk. I think it's exactly the Popper thing that you were describing, that liberalism gets to this weird place where it thinks, oh, we must allow the people who want to slit our throats, encourage others to come and slit our throats because that's liberalism. And it's like, that's not.
That's a complete misunderstanding.
It really isn't. And it is, I think, a symptom of how we've tied ourselves in knots a little bit. Because I suspect back in 1942, if Goebbels had a radio program in the UK, there would be zero hesitation to ban it. No one would go, oh, this is Goebbels' personal radio station. It has nothing to do with Hitler.
I would encourage everyone to go and listen to that monologue that you recorded months ago now. Have a listen back to that because it is time well spent.
Quiet riot. Quiet riot.
Let's move on though. What should we talk about next?
The gas transit deal.
Okay, yeah.
So the deal between Russia and Ukraine ended in the early hours of the 1st of January. It's no surprise. Kyiv had repeatedly said it would not extend the agreement in the context of the ongoing war. Ukraine's energy minister, German Galushenko, said in a statement that this is a historic event. Russia is losing its market. It will suffer financial losses. Europe has already made the decision to abandon Russian gas. And so it needs to be understood that it is Ukraine that is stopping this deal. And Ukraine is actually losing a significant amount of money as well, because yes, Russia makes billions from the gas it supplies, but Ukraine has also made just under $1 billion from the transit fees that it gets. So it's not something Ukraine is doing lightly, is what I'm trying to say.
Isn't it mad? Can we just pause that for the last 3 years of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Russia has had to continue to pay energy transit fees to Ukraine?
It's mad. It's mad that a pre-war deal had survived that period. Yeah. And it is a really fun law thing that you learn very early on when you're studying law, that this is the reason why there are very rarely nowadays formal declarations of war. Formal declaration of war is a very specific legal instrument, by the way, and there hasn't been one, as far as I'm concerned, between Ukraine and Russia, because it vitiates all contracts between those countries. And so it is strange. Now, all of this is putting pressure on gas prices across Europe, and it is already having a significant impact on the breakaway Moldovan region of Transnistria, which has been the subject of quite a lot of Russian sort of interference. There's a lot of flirting between Transnistria,
a lot of free energy,
and Russia. They have had to cut heating and hot water supplies. We're in the middle of winter. We're talking about how cold the weather is.
It's even colder there.
Okay, so what's going on briefly, Naomi?
Kyiv gave plenty of notice. So governments have had 3 years' notice of this happening and time to prepare. And Europe has stocked up on gas. Gas levels across the European Union, the UK, are good. And that is because they have switched to buying it in the form of LNG, liquefied natural gas, from places like Qatar and America. And the latter is now, of course, a gas exporter. You know, this has, of course, increased the bid price for LNG, and transactional Trump will be thrilled because this now is going to be a boon for US energy exports. And Russia just doesn't have the LNG port capacity that it would need to in order to immediately switch from, okay, well, if I'm not selling this anymore through the pipeline in Ukraine to Europe, we can just sell elsewhere. It's not going to be as easy for it to do that. However, it is ramping up its LNG port capacity, buying parts from China, but that will take years to sort of come to proper fruition, but they are doing it. In the particular situation of Transnistria, which you mentioned, I do feel incredibly sorry for Moldova. I can't see how it's not going to be an absolutely terrible situation. When you look at where Transnistria is on a map, it is in the most western part of the border. So it's made things tougher for everybody, but broadly it is going to hurt Russia more, and that is a good thing. But, you know, for every action, there is a equal and opposite reaction, and that will be Trump being very happy because LNG exports from the US will go up in volume and value.
Transnistria has no border with Russia.
No.
And what I don't understand is them turning down an offer from Moldova to get energy from them. Isn't that a massive risk? Like, if they're trying to kind of convert the population to Russophilia and declare some sort of independence, then cutting off people's heat and hot water in the dead of winter, isn't that likely to turn a lot of people into saying, you know, screw you, we should rejoin Moldova? Not that they ever left, but, you know, screw the Transnistria cause, as it were.
And sort of long before that, we are already in sub-zero temperatures. And if you've got no hot water and heating and you are a very, very poor region of a very, very poor country, surely we're going to see migration away from Transnistria. I don't know the answer. I think it is incredibly worrying for them, and I don't see why they've done this. The response from the Transnistrian officials seem to be, no, Moldova, we don't want you to help us out because then we're at the mercy of bid prices across the rest of the world, and we don't think you would have our interest in that, and we would be forced to buy extremely expensive gas.
So we'd rather have none.
So we'd rather have none. I mean, it's insane. Slovakia is another one that is very upsetting because when you look back to the outbreak of the Ukraine-Russian war, Slovakia had a different government who were incredibly supportive of Ukraine, I believe gave Ukraine a lot of its old Soviet military capacity to help them out. They then had a change of government, and their current president seems to be sucking up to Putin, and he went to Moscow on a visit relatively recently. They too are going to be pretty badly affected by this. You look at a leader like that and say, well, for fuck's sake, you had 3 years' notice. Zelensky hasn't cut you off at the knees. You had plenty of time to make like other European countries and sort your stockpiles out. So, yeah, again, I think nowhere near to the extent of Transnistria and Moldova, but it's not great for Slovakia either.
And Austria is the third country of that set that still depends quite a bit on Russian gas. And I guess we should also take a moment to celebrate, I guess, the extraordinary achievement of the last 3 years in terms of reducing Europe's reliance on Russian gas. I mean, at its peak, Moscow's share of European gas imports stood at 35%, more than a third, and it's now about 8%, and very, very concentrated in those three countries that we mentioned. So outside that, it's even less. And again, Austria is having its own problems with a very right-wing government that is struggling to put together a coalition. It actually just collapsed talks of an Austrian coalition just collapsed in the early hours of this morning when the most junior partner of that three-party coalition, the Liberal Neos Party, decided not to continue discussions on forming a new government. So we're seeing a lot of instability, I guess. But how big a risk is this for Putin? He has used gas as a blackmail fulcrum against Europe for such a long time. And the fact that it's now so reduced and it has reached a point where basically Ukraine is saying, right, you've had a period of methadone, cold turkey now. So what's going on?
Well, when we look at it in terms of actual hard currency, Gazprom will lose about 5 billion as a consequence of the closure of the route through Ukraine. And this is a country already struggling. We talked about this before in the show. They are fighting a war that is not long-term sustainable in terms of the cash they're putting into it, the goodwill of the Russian people because of the shockingly high death toll of its military. And this will hurt. This will make it even more difficult for them to sustain the war at the level that they are. So, that's good. And on balance, this is a good thing that has happened. And I agree with it. And I'm very supportive of Ukraine doing it. But I don't think it will be a cliff edge moment for us with this conflict. It will just continue to hurt Putin's advances slowly over time.
Quiet riot.
Alex, we need to move on because I do want to talk about small boats and Suella Braverman.
Are you sure?
Well, I want to have a good giggle. But the serious backdrop to it is the small boats numbers continuing to dominate headlines. Figures out this week showed that the numbers arriving over the channel in small boats last year was up a quarter, more than 7,000 people. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has announced various measures that she wants to put in place to try and smash the gangs who run the boats, including blocking their mobile numbers, limiting access to their finances, which I hasten to add is probably one kind of debanking even Farage can get behind. But with the release of the numbers, which we'll get into more detail in a little bit because I think you've had a rummage through them, will come various media opportunities for anti-immigrant spokespeople to wade in with their ideas for stopping channel crossings. And cue the wife of prominent Reform UK member Suella Braverman MP, who had quite the extraordinary LBC interview this week. Remember, this is the former Home Secretary who made the bizarre claim that Italy shares a land border with Turkey and insisted that she had seen it with her own eyes, wall and all. Let's have a little listen.
Italy have reinforced their borders. They built a wall. I went to see that wall. They built a wall on the land border between Italy and Turkey. They've got drones. They've got armoured vehicles. They've got soldiers. The numbers crossing that border have plummeted.
Alex, I ask you, what? what is going on? And I assume she got Italy and Greece mixed up.
The wall between Italy and Turkey at the moment involves Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia and Bulgaria, and a bit of Greece.
That makes a great wall of China.
In all honesty, that is some wall that Italy has built between.
And she's seen it. She's seen it.
She has seen it. No, she has said since then that obviously, she tweeted, obviously I meant Greece's land border with Turkey, which I was honoured to visit. It's been very successful. Apparently.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that her full statement on this. In many ways, the fact that she meant the Greek border is actually even more geopolitically literate. Fewer people will understand why instantly the Italy-Turkey thing is obviously very funny. But Greece has been in an exceptionally tense situation with Turkey, and before that, the Ottoman Empire, for about a millennium. So that land border has always been quite zealously
It's a bit of a
guarded.
tricky one.
I mean, the idea that the Greeks put drones and armoured vehicles up there to guard the border against asylum seekers rather than Turkey is something that will be very, very funny to anyone Greek or anyone Turkish, I dare say. Also, the primary route of refugee crossings into Greece is the sea. There are points in Greece that are navigable within just over 10 miles. That's half the English Channel. And also, they're not busy shipping lanes, and they're not deep waters, and they're not cold waters, etc., etc. They're often very, very shallow basins with absolutely no traffic there. So,
and not much waves
you
or
know,
current.
to give you an idea, in 2023, out of a total of 48,721 refugees who arrived in Greece, 41,500 of those were by sea.
Right.
And just over 7,000 were by land. And that is a massive increase, by the way, on 2022, because it is primarily motivated by outside factors.
Of course it is.
You know, that was the year when Greece saw quite a lot of people arriving from Afghanistan, for instance, adding to those migration waves.
Yeah.
And so I think actually the biggest thing that will have an effect is the situation in Syria. I find it quite interesting that the Labour Party, the Labour government might be able to turn around at the end of next year and say, look how many fewer crossings there have been, not because of anything it's done, but just because the push factors have reduced.
Indeed. So moving on from Braverman's geography GCSE fail, what do the small boat numbers actually tell us? Like, were there significant monthly changes within them? Did a lot of people arrive after the election of a Labour government versus earlier on in the year? Is that reflected in the fact that it would have been summer and therefore safer to cross?
Yeah, they haven't released the monthly figures yet.
Right.
Not for the whole year. So all I can tell you is that up until June, the curve, as it were, of crossings was tracking almost exactly 2022, which was a record year. And so you would expect even higher numbers by the end of the year, by about 20-odd%. I know that sounds strange, but basically the curve always balloons in the summer months because the weather is better and it is safer to cross. So I will post a link to the Statista data in the show notes so that people can see what I mean. So by that point, 2023 had been a lower curve up until June.
Yeah.
And that's why it sort of ended with even lower figures. And 2024 had been tracking the record year, which was 2022. So I guess there is some indication that crossings are lower than would be anticipated looking at the first half of the year. But obviously they are higher than they were last year. And again, it would be interesting to see what happened in the month of June and July, because the weather would have started getting better and how that changed in August, etc.
And let's maybe do a dedicated episode, because I'd like to get into anti-refugee policies and their efficacy and all of the stuff that the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is talking about versus what all of the migrant expert groups and humanitarian groups around the world say is the only way to smash gangs or stop boats or whatever.
Yes, I think we should do that. And we should also, in fairness, do one on the Russian transit gas situation, because, you know, the two of us are not expert by any means. And I'm sure there's loads of stuff in that segment that will have lacked a sort of nuance that a specialist in the area could have brought.
We are keen amateurs on the topic and nothing more.
Yeah.
Quiet Riot.
You've got a hard stop in 30 seconds time. So let's wrap things up for today. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, giving us part of your headspace on a Sunday. And we really do wish you all the best for 2025.
And guys, we need to overtake Reform UK. Which means we need more than 130,000 of you to back us on ko-fi.com/quietriotpod. You know it's the right thing to do. So head over and sign up now if you can. And tell your friends to do it too. Become a Quiet Riot recruiter.
Yeah, let's start with 1,300 and work up from there. Not least because it means you can join in the fun at our forthcoming Ask Us Anything. And it really is Ask Us Anything, as people who attended the last one will attest to, and our big editorial meeting. But if you can't stretch to paid support, go and give us a glowing review on whatever you get your podcasts from. And do it right now. Give us a 5-star rating and a review, because that's the only New Year resolution you have to keep.
We'll be back on Thursday with a fabulous first guest of season 2 of Quiet Riot. So make sure you're subscribed to find out who that is as soon as the episode drops.
But for now, stay warm, stay dry, and remember, we love you lots. Bye.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese. Quiet Riot is a co-production with Sandstone Global.
Quiet Riot.
Quiet Riot Sunday School. The miniskirts to our Thursday ball gown. I'm Naomi. What?
What? Okay, shall we try a third time, Lucky? Woo!